On today's show, are the Warriors taking momentum back against the Kings, or do they still need to prove to us they can win on the road? What is happening in this playoffs with the suspensions and all that? How have the Lakers taken advantage of the Grizzlies? We'll talk about that and more with Howard Beck on today's Locked On NBA. Let's go.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome. You are Locked On to the NBA. My name is Nick Angstadt, host of the Locked On Mavericks podcast. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On NBA is free and available wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe and follow the show. We're a daily, 5-day-a-week NBA show. We have 5-day-a-week shows on every team that you care about. I host the Maverick Show, all kinds of different shows. Check them out. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. And joining me, it's my pleasure to get to say the three most important words in niche NBA podcasting. What up, Beck?
Good morning, Nick. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing better than the playoffs, I guess. The playoffs have just been weird. There's just been weird stuff. But I think the one series that we'll start with is Warriors-Kings, because that's been a great series. I'm loving watching that series, so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Lakers-Grizzlies, the Dillon Brooks thing. Why has he turned his head from being the villain that he so desperately wants to be on the inside, but on the outside he doesn't want to tell us that. He wants to blame the fans and the media. And then we'll talk about Knicks versus Cavs. How have the Knicks taken a 3-1 lead? All of a sudden, we're looking at this Knicks team as a really good, competent playoff team. Where did they come from? We'll talk about that. Let's start here, though, with the Golden State Warriors. Beck, did the Warriors take back momentum in this series, or do we still need to see them win on the road?
Yes, all of that. Both. I'm checking all the boxes. Momentum in the playoffs is a funny thing, right? Because we talk about it all the time and we try to get a sense of it. And then we ask the coaches and then we ask the players, and and it's a really ephemeral thing. If I could throw an SAT word in there.
Hold on.
Like if you go look it up while I'm talking, it's fleeting. Or I don't know that it actually exists, because every game takes on its own personality. Some of that has to do with the crowd. Some of that has to do with the venue. Some of it has to do with somebody getting in early foul trouble. Some of it's just, I don't know that there's really much carry through. And as soon as we think we have a beat on a series, it will flip on you very quickly. So I'm always hesitant to say all right, the Warriors have put everything back in order. They've got momentum. They're the veteran team, but they are the veteran team. And I would say this, as bleak as it looked for them, coming out of Sacramento through 2 games, down 0-2, Draymond suspended for game 3. You could kind of see this coming, right? They're going to go home. They're going to be pumped up by their crowd. They are as bad as they are on the road this season. They are still dominant at home. They can win without Draymond Green. And if they win that game, Draymond comes back for game 4 and they're going to win that one too. And it went exactly to that script. You could see this coming. I am not shocked at all, as we sit here on Monday morning, that the Warriors and Kings are now tied 2-2. And that's not any shot at the Kings. It's just, as somebody who, and I think you know this, before the playoffs started, the question of who's coming out of the West, which is this impossible thing to answer. I still leaned Warriors before the playoffs started. And then I looked like an idiot when they were down 0-2. I'm still not sure about it. I'm not sure about anything, frankly. But I believe the Warriors could win this series. So momentum, I don't know. They still have to win a game in Sacramento. That's where they're heading for game 5. They get a couple days off in between to rest up a little bit. But, we can't measure momentum. We can't measure swagger either. But I think they got it back, they are the defending champs, and they're playing like it, with the possible exception of Steph calling a timeout that they didn't have.
The wild thing about playoff series, well, there's several wild things. One of them is if Harrison Barnes hits that shot at the end of game 4, we're talking about a completely different thing right now.
Exactly.
And Warriors fans had I think Cyrus Satzes of Locked On Warriors tweeted that, did you guys see the dynasty's life flash before your eyes when Harrison Barnes took that shot at the end there?
Well, it's funny too, because the ball gets kicked to him, and immediately in my head, because I'm a writer and I've covered 1,000 playoff games, I'm immediately thinking of like the Harrison Barnes original Warrior who won a championship and got tossed aside for Kevin Durant being the one to sink them. And I'm like, the ball is in midair and these things are all cycling through my head, and then it goes, thunk, and I go, all right, never mind. I mean, not that I was writing about that game, but it's just, you can never turn that stuff off. But yes, it would have been on some level poetic or cruel, however you want to frame that, depending on your vantage point.
And yet he bricked it, and here we are talking about, did the Warriors take momentum back in this game? And we're not even talking about the Steph Curry blown like Chris Webber timeout, where he took the timeout that they didn't have. Like that almost sunk them too. But like you said earlier, if you looked at this script before this playoff series even started, you'd say, oh yeah, the Kings will probably win the first two. They're this young team. They're hungry. They're going to come out and want to prove themselves. They're going to be at home. The Warriors can't win on the road at all this season. It's just been one of the weirdest things about this season. And yet and then Draymond gets suspended, all that. Like you think, oh man, a lot of people wrote off the Warriors in game 3 when he was suspended, saying, oh, the Kings will go up 3-0 and then it'll just be over for the Warriors. And here we are 2-2, and it seems like the Warriors are taking back momentum. One thing that's really stood out to me in this series, though, is that the Warriors, according to Cleaning the Glass, are plus 57.4 points per 100 possessions when Curry is on the court in this series, which is just insane because the next highest Warrior is plus 22.1. So Curry's at 57.4. Looney's at 22. No other Warrior is at plus 3. Like, he is by it far been the most impactful Warrior in this series and probably the most impactful player in this playoffs. Nobody else that I looked up, I looked through every team yesterday, nobody else was at plus 40 or higher. He is like dominating, and when he leaves the court, they cannot score, they cannot win, like they cannot win their minutes. Why can't the Warriors survive without Steph on the court in this series so far?
I think what this is proving is that if you are among those people who worship at the feet of net on-off ratings, Steph Curry is now the MVP of the season.
The advanced stats, they're coming for you.
I can't take another argument based on how much a team collapses when their star leaves. That's why they're stars, folks. Like, and if your supporting cast blows anyway,
then why are the Warriors collapsing the most when their stars?
Yeah, I mean, and they should not. They should not, because this is largely the team that won the championship last year, and I haven't looked at the on-off stats from their postseason run in 2022, but I suspect that the drop-off is starker now than it was then. I'd have to go back and look, but I mean, look, Jordan Poole had a really eye-opening breakthrough postseason in 2022. It's why he got paid. I know people think cynically it was because he also got punched by Draymond Green and they needed to like settle things down and whatever. But he got paid because he became a really important player and a reliable player and a guy who could spark them and on some level even lead them. I mean, lead them as a lead guard, not lead them like Draymond Green or Steph leads them. But he was vital last spring, and he was up and down. I mean, it wasn't consistent, but you want Jordan Poole to take that next step and have the consistency that then allows you to say, you know what, we can rest Steph safely for periods of time in a really critical game, and Jordan Poole can settle us down. So I don't want to put it all on him, but when you ask, like, why is the drop off? Well, Steph is the main thrust of your offense. Draymond Green is a playmaker, but he's not a playmaker who breaks down the defense on his own. Somebody else has to keep the offense humming. And as much as Klay Thompson is having a fantastic season and is better than he was a year ago, as much as Andrew Wiggins is critical to this team, all these different guys, they all play very specific roles. And Steph is, he's always been their engine, but you don't have like an Andre Iguodala type coming off the bench right now. He's obviously hurt and he's, got a bazillion miles on him. They don't have that other, I think, playmaker initiator spark so that when Steph goes to the bench, they can keep it going. So I think that's probably part of it without having drilled down too far on this. But I mean, it's interesting. Like, Steve Kerr is leaning further, harder and harder on his stars. Steph played almost 43 minutes in game 4. That was his highest of not just the series, but I'm scrolling back. It was one of his highest, I think, of the season. He played 43 minutes in a March 11th win against Milwaukee. That's a lot. He hasn't been over 40 a ton, but he's been over 40 in 2 of the 4 games so far in this series. Something just to kind of keep an eye on. But Steph's in incredible condition. Yes, he missed a bunch of games this season, but he's in incredible shape, and they're going to need it. And the unfortunate thing for them is these playoff series are very spaced apart.
It's wild to watch how good they are when he's on the court and how bad they are when he sits. Steve Kerr was asked right before the fourth quarter of game 4, what do you do about the difference between Curry on and Curry off? And how do you stay alive with him? It's like, well, we'll just keep him on. And then he did. And then he played his most minutes, like you said.
Yep. I mean, he knew. He knows exactly what they need right now. And it's as much Steph as they can possibly get.
Coming up, let's get into Lakers versus Grizzlies. Why is Dillon Brooks not accepting the villain mantle that he is so desperately wants on the inside? How have the Lakers taken advantage of this series? We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Tonight, I'm looking at Lakers and Grizzlies, and I'm taking Anthony Davis more than 23.5 points. I can hit more on that. I can combine that with Ja Morant, 28.5 points. Give me more on that just slightly. LeBron, 27.5 points. I'm going to go less on LeBron for this one because I feel like he's been distributing more. He's been more of a defensive rebounding guy and letting other guys cook. And then Jaren Jackson Jr., 20.5. Give me more on that because I think that they'll bounce back a little bit. If I do all that, I put down $20. I can win $100 if I hit the power play on that. Just $20, I can win $200 on Prize Picks. You can do all kinds of other sports, all kinds of other things besides points too. You can do rebounds, points, rebounds, assists combined, fantasy score, 3-pointers made, all kinds of different things. Go check it out. They have NHL, they have MLB, all kinds of different sports. Check it out and use that promo code LOCKEDON to get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com. I also want to tell you about the Nissan Ultimate Player of the Week. It's tough for me to look back at this weekend and say to give me another player besides what Ja Morant did in that Lakers Grizzlies game where he went 22 points by himself. That was just electric. You just watch him, and with the hurt hand and all that, for the Grizzlies to look as bad as they did in the first quarter and for him to bounce back, I think that gave that team life. I don't know if I think the Grizzlies will come back and win this, so I'm going to give it to Ja for now because he's just been an electric player to watch. He's been brilliantly fierce, stunningly powerful, driving to the basket, all kinds of great stuff. Just like the 2023 Nissan Ariya, it packs pinion-to-your-seat power and premium intelligence, all in one EV. That's why Ja Morant is the Nissan Ariya Player of the Week. Shop now at nissanusa.com. All right, Beck, let's get into the Lakers versus the Grizzlies. Lakers take the lead in this series, and I'm starting to look at this team and go, okay, are they taking a step up or are the Grizzlies falling apart? And so that's what I'm curious about with this series, but I kind of want to start here. What's your take on the Dillon Brooks nut shot incident and all the other nut shots we've had and weird flagrants and weird suspensions? It's sort of been what's shaped this playoffs so far. You have the Dillon Brooks nut shot on LeBron. You have Draymond stomping on Sabonis. Harden with the nut shot on Royce O'Neal. Joel Embiid with the nut shot on Claxton. That was only a flagrant one, but it's been. And then Dejounte Murray the other night had a bump in with a ref at the end of the game. We haven't heard yet by the time we're recording this if he's going to get suspended, but as Charles Barkley said on TNT, oh, he's going to get suspended. Just immediately right out. What is your take on the Dillon Brooks incident and then all the other incidents we've had in the playoffs so far?
Been really, really kind of strange. I do look forward to the NBA's new ad campaign, the NBA where nut shots happen. That'll be really great. Charles is right, by the way. Charles is right. That's automatic. You cannot go bumping a ref, and it almost looked like it's the weird grainy Zapruder film version of this that we've seen so far. We haven't seen any of the official cameras. I think it was somebody's cell phone video, but
one guy distance. That one guy probably got Dejounte suspended.
That one dude. No, but I mean, listen, NBA security sees everything. Let me tell you, they see everything, and there's a bazillion cameras in those arenas. Trust me. Also, the officials fill out post-game reports, and that's something that they're going to have to put in the report anyway. So even if no camera had caught it, it would have been, and then, after the final buzzer, Dejounte Murray came over and bumped up against Jemitis Petraeus. Like it's going to be in there. He's going to get suspended. I'll be shocked if he doesn't. And the NBA has surprised me on a couple of things recently with regard to suspensions and non-suspensions and other things and ejections. You cannot bump a referee, especially that aggressively. Even incidental contact with the referee can be dicey at times. That was not even close to incidental. That was as intentional as it gets. I like Dejounte Murray, and the Hawks have shown some fight in this series against the Celtics, and so it's unfortunate, but there's no way around it. The NBA can't let that go.
Yep.
The rest of it, I think that the tough thing is, listen, you never want a week of NBA play, especially in the playoffs, to be dominated by us all discussing the officiating. And I'll sit here. I will often be the one to push back on a lot of the officiating criticism or conspiracy theorizing, because I feel like it goes out of control. And I usually want to be the voice of nuance and reason to say, listen, really tough job. They get it right more often than not, but sometimes some things happen. But I will just say this, as somebody who I think views the officials through a more nuanced prism, and have had a lot of conversations with referees and officiating staff and officiating, the folks overseeing the program over the years. So I feel like I have a sense of it. The one thing that you don't want, if you're the referees, is to be the subject of all this discussion, good, bad, or otherwise. Even if they think they got every call right and it's just fans and players complaining, if you're the conversation, then something has gone wrong. Almost by definition, if you are the conversation, something has gone wrong, and it's a bad look for the league and for the referees. So the fact that you and I are having to discuss it at all, Nick, is bad by definition.
We should. We shouldn't know as many refs' names as fans do, right? Like Mavs fans, we have this list of like all the refs that have wronged Luka in some way, and I think Luka has those as well. And like this list shouldn't be as long as it is.
Yeah, there's a whole other line of discussion there, but and I'll say this, having covered the league for a long time, I actually feel like I know fewer referees' names now than I used to, because there's been so much turnover the last 5 to 10 years that a lot of the referees that I really either got to know or just knew their names by immediately by face or even by jersey number sometimes. So many have retired, which is possibly part of the problem here, by the way. The refereeing staff has gotten a lot younger in recent years, and so if people see some inconsistencies or concerns, I think that's probably feeding into it. Monty McCutcheon went on NBA Today last week on ESPN and spent like a good 7.5 minutes explaining the differences between the Embiid kick to Claxton versus Draymond stomp versus this versus that, all these different things. And it seems like they made a distinction, like it wasn't about intent with Embiid as much as it was about where his foot actually landed. Like if his foot had landed like 3 inches in one direction or the other, it's a difference. Like he hit thigh instead of
shaft,
groin. Yeah, I mean, like, but that's weird, right? Like everybody else views it as like, no, he tried to kick him in the nuts. Like, so
imagine being in that meeting with them, with like the league office, trying to figure out, okay, zoom in, enhance. Okay, no, he hits thigh there. Look, see there.
I don't want to even think about how much more technology they have to further. Yeah.
Oh, there's probably telestration and all that too. Like they're drawn on and trying.
They're bringing in like doctors and saying like, we needed some specialized view of like where does the thigh technically end.
Bringing a tailor in for the inseam.
Yeah, there you go. I just that one was strange, but I guess I get it. There's no ambiguity in Dillon Brooks punching LeBron down there. Like there's no question where you punched Dillon Brooks. And in James Harden's case, at least in James Harden's case, it looked like he was trying to use the off arm to get a guy off of him thing. But usually that's a little bit more parallel to the floor and not so much perpendicular to where your hand comes down. The Dillon Brooks thing, like, come on, like, it's obvious what happened, like that him feigning shock, especially coming in the wake of James Harden the James Harden incident and the Embiid incident, everything, like Harden got ejected. Dillon Brooks, why are you expecting anything different for you? So no, it's not, you didn't get ejected because you're the villain and because the media and fans have decided to cast you as the villain. One, you cast yourself as the villain and you've been enjoying it and riding that particular, play that you've been running. You've been enjoying that. You can't all of a sudden then turn around and say you're the victim of it. Secondly, it was completely consistent with how the NBA adjudicated the James Harden incident, where they ejected him for a shot down there. So no sympathy for Dillon Brooks at this point. The Grizzlies, this has been their personality. And if you want to say I'm conflating Dillon Brooks with the Grizzlies, like, no, their personality as a team has been, they're young and a little volatile. And that's been them for the last couple of years. And yes, Dillon Brooks embodies a lot of that, but it's also Ja Morant's off-court stuff. It's just the overall, collective personality of that team. Look, if this series is getting away, well, one, I expected the Lakers to win it. I did, I think, say Lakers in 6 in this one, but it's partially because, the Grizzlies are down a couple of really important players. And then, of course, they did lose Ja Morant for a period of this along the way. Phenomenal comeback game by him, by the way, which gets lost amid all of this.
Yeah.
But something certainly for the Grizzlies to grasp onto in terms of what they could be optimistic about, and something for the Lakers to be a little concerned about.
Coming up, I want to get into this series a little bit more. What's the biggest difference between Anthony Davis game 2 and Anthony Davis game 3? Can he sustain that? And then we'll talk about Knicks Cavs coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about the Ultimate Pro Basketball GM game. If you're a fan of mobile games like I am, if you just need something to spend some time on when you're waiting, you're flying, or you're waiting in a waiting room or something, or if just to pass the time while you watch a show, because sometimes life can be a lot and you got to watch your comfort show like I do, and you sit and play Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. This is an incredible game. You start with nothing. You have to build up your team through the draft, free agency, hiring coaches, training players, all that kind of stuff. It's so complex and so intricate that if you're a super fan of like the NBA and the cap and salary cap and all that kind of stuff, this is a game you're going to love. I played through a 24 season run of this, won 4 championships. It was an incredible run, and you just get so attached to some of the players because you see them from draft to retirement and all that kind of stuff. Locked On NBA listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when you use the promo code Locked On. That's all caps, one word, Locked On, in the game store. Make sure you check it out. Download the game. Visit probasketballgm.com. Scan the code to look it up in the App Store. That's probasketballgm.com. It's the ultimate pro basketball GM game. Check it out. Start your dynasty today. All right, Beck. I want to keep talking about Lakers Grizzlies because I think the series, even though it's, the Dillon Brooks stuff is going to be the headlines, I think this series has been interesting as well. What's the biggest difference between Game 2 Anthony Davis and Game 3 Anthony Davis, which I think, to me at least, is the big reason why Lakers got to win in Game 3 and not in Game 2?
It's a hard thing to put your finger on. I mean, other than to say that this is Anthony Davis, right? Like, there's a reason why he's been one of the most frustrating stars of the last 7-8 years, whether it was in New Orleans or whether in LA. Like, there are days where you look out there and you say, this is a top 5 player. This is a guy who can lead a team. This is a guy you can build around. This is a guy that in the Lakers case, LeBron can hand the baton to. And as LeBron winds down, Anthony Davis continues to grow into, the leadership role. And there were moments even this whole season where you saw for long stretches when LeBron was out, where Anthony Davis really took that on. And then sometimes he disappears. And sometimes he has a game like Game 2 where he plays almost 38 minutes and scores 13 points on 14 shots. But I don't know that there's any real rhyme or reason to it, especially, when they're playing against, again, a Grizzlies team that's missing 2 key bigs in Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. Anthony Davis, he should be winning his matchup on a nightly basis. And I know, like, they've got Jaren Jackson Jr., who's been on him for much of the series. But you're Anthony Davis. Like, you're supposed to be this unstoppable force, and we enjoy it when you are, and then you kind of wonder where it goes. So I don't know without going and rewatching what the difference in his play between game 2 and 3, or game 2 versus 1 and 3, because he was fine in game 1, and obviously he was dominant in game 3.
He has a lot of these like turnaround fades, these like jump hook kind of stuff that takes a ton of touch, and it just feels like if there's anything off about you, like as a person, you're gonna be completely off in your shot, and then you won't have the confidence to take some of those shots later, because they are really difficult shots that he tries to take. I mean, Jaren Jackson, Xavier Tillman are doing a decent job on him. It's just when that shot starts falling, all of a sudden he just looks like a different player. It's a different kind of game. And the Lakers look unbeatable. Like, you go back to the bubble in 2020, he was hitting those shots. He was hitting threes consistently, and the Lakers look unbeatable. And then when he's not hitting, you're like, okay, well, where are they going to get offense from? Is Rui Hachimura going to still shoot 75% from three? Like, can he keep that up? Can Austin Reeves beat him? Can he give him that? And that's what I think we're looking at with this. What do you think about the rest of this series? And did Ja's 22-point quarter give the Grizzlies some kind of momentum back? Did it give him some kind of like hope in this series, or are the Grizzlies just falling apart?
It was interesting the first couple of minutes of that game where Ja lost the ball a couple times, and you immediately thought, oh man, this is going to be a struggle. Should he even be out there? Like that was the first thought I had in the first few minutes of that game after a couple turnovers, was like, is he hurting them? And granted, with Ja's talent, you'll take whatever the drawbacks are, but not if he can't even keep the ball in his hands. Like, his handle is everything. And so I thought this may go badly. And then he kind of got it under control, and he figured out, I don't know if that was a mental / physical adjustment, trying to figure out how best to to be able to dribble and move and make moves and keep the ball under control despite the injury and everything that's on him. But he was okay. And then he was better than okay. And I think the Grizzlies should take, great encouragement from that. Because they've still got a real shot. Like, I'm not writing them off at all. Again, I picked the Lakers to win this series, and I still think the Lakers have, the more, just a higher upside right now, with them being fairly whole, with them having found some things. And the thing is, like, the Lakers, the inconsistency in the Rui Hachimuras, the Dennis Schroeders, D'Angelo Russells, whatever, like, I think all that's kind of to be expected, partially because of who those players are. They've been inconsistent players in their careers, and partially because this team was kind of thrown together, 2/3 of the way into the season. And then without LeBron, like, they're still kind of figuring each other out. And, that aspect of it, I think, is coming into play at times. The lack of familiarity or a rhythm or a muscle memory for that group. But no, I think the Lakers are in really good shape here. Obviously, I imagine that they're going to try to make Ja Morant beat them with that bad hand, because the hand's not going to be healed. Like, he got through that game and played pretty well despite it all. But I think that's something the Lakers probably are still looking to exploit. And if Ja, can't replicate that performance, or if anything acts up with the hand, then obviously they're in trouble.
To me, it looked like, if you ever played with that orange ball on the playground, like the orange basketball that has no grip on it at all. It's just like so smooth. Like, for some reason, being outdoors or whatever, the weathering, like there's just no grip on it. It looks like he was playing with one of those with that hand, like trying to grip the ball.
I haven't seen any of the post-game quotes, but I don't know if anybody asked him about, like, what changed, like those first couple minutes where it looked like he just could not. To your point, like, it looked like he was dealing with a ball with like Vaseline on it or something, and suddenly kind of figured it out. Like, I don't know what the difference was, but it's credit to him. He kind of figured it out.
Yeah, he did. Let's talk about Knicks Cavs. When you just look at this series, Knicks are up 3-1. The bing bonging is happening all over the place. The Knicks fans are going nuts. I support it fully. What's the biggest reason the Knicks are up 3-1 right now?
I think it's several things. Like, the Cavs looked absolutely rattled in Game 3 at the Garden. And I don't blame them for being rattled. It was insane in there. I was there that night. The Knicks hadn't had a fully populated home playoff game since 2013, because in the playoffs 2 years ago when they played the Hawks, that was still COVID restrictions. There were still, limiting the number of people in the building, all that stuff. It was still kind of a stranger vibe. And before that, the Knicks hadn't been in the playoffs since 2013. So that was my first game at the Garden for the playoffs in 10 years the other night. It was insanely loud, without artificial noise, without PA people cranking stuff up like they do in many arenas in this league. It was all organic, and it was intense. Like my eardrums were like vibrating. And again, not amplified noise, just the crowd. And they looked rattled. Like Darius Garland just looked absolutely like unprepared for the moment. And why would he be? This is his first playoff run. This is Evan Mobley's first playoff run. It's Isaac Okoro's first playoff run. Like the guys, aside from Donovan Mitchell, who of course was in some, multiple playoff series with Utah, the only other playoff experience they had was like Jared Allen and Karis LeVert in their Brooklyn days when they were just kind of this upstart team with no real pressure on them. This is a top 4 team with pressure on them, with a bunch of young guys who don't have a lot of experience, who just had to figure out how to play in the most intense environment possibly in the NBA. And so there was a lot of that. Like never dismiss the psychological and even like physiological aspect of it, the impact that has on you, how tight that can make a player. And I think you saw it in their play. Like, so there's that. The Knicks were not a good defensive team this season. They were okay. I think they were like I don't know, 17th, 18th or something in defensive rating in the regular season, but they've cranked it up a notch. Like they're defending their asses off, and there's just nowhere for the Cavs guards to really penetrate and get to the basket. And then the guys who are around the basket just aren't doing anything. Like Jared Allen has kind of shrunk, and Evan Mobley, like here this imposing this, one of the best 4 or 5 combinations in the league, especially defensively. Like obviously they're not go-to offensive players, but still, it's a lot of size and reach around the basket for putbacks and lobs, and that has not proven an advantage much in this series. Evan Mobley's missing a lot of stuff. A lot of it's like these little quick, little jump hooks in the lane that are bouncing off the front of the rim. And again, I think like Evan Mobley, he's young. His offensive game is still developing. Everybody believes he's going to be like an absolute superstar, but he's just not there yet. And, again, like just not up to the moment at this stage, it seems like. I think they'll be better back in Cleveland for Game 5. I think, they'll get that one probably, and then it's a 3-2 series, and the Knicks get the chance to close it out at the Garden. Then we'll see if the Cavs, after a couple of games at the Garden, can settle in. The other thing I haven't mentioned, obviously, aside from in passing, but Donovan Mitchell, who they sent out everything they had to get him to make them a plausible contender. Like he's gotten worse as the series has gone on instead of better. That's not ideal.
It's wild.
38 points in game 1, 17 in game 2, 22 in game 3, 11 in game 4. He's shooting 30% on threes. And Donovan Mitchell, like, the thing that struck me early in his career in Utah was not just all this talent and his burst and whatever. He's like a big game player and a big moment guy, right? Like he had some moments very early in his career when he was young where it was like, oh man, he's not afraid of the moment, and he could take over a game. And so it's a little shocking. I feel like to some extent, by the way, as badly as Donovan Mitchell shooting on threes, 30%, Garland's been as bad on twos. Garland's shooting 40% from 2-point range in this series. And I think just kind of the power sharing arrangement between them, I don't mean to imply it's like a struggle or anything, but it was always something that I wondered from the moment they got Donovan Mitchell. You've got 2 guys who are both great with the ball in their hands. They can both play off the ball, sure, but both of them have a comfort level of having the ball. And how is that going to go? Is it going to feel natural? Are they going to be able to figure out the rhythm between them? Or is this going to be a night to night thing where sometimes one of them is feeling a little bit, like lost in the offense? And I feel like that's happened at times in this series. And again, their first playoff series together. So maybe to be expected.
Yeah. The difference between the Knicks defense, like in the regular season where they ranked 19th in defensive rating, like 115 points per 100 possessions allowed, to right now in the playoffs, they're allowing 101 points per 100 possessions, where the Cavs weren't a bad offense. They were the 7th ranked offense in the NBA during the regular season. Like, it's just such a big stark difference. And I look at it as those two guards, like, just you have to have more from Donovan Mitchell. Darius Garland has given you some spurts here and there, but still hasn't, put together. I feel like he still hasn't put together like a full game that's been really great. And honestly, Brunson has been the best guard in this series. And if you said that to me before this series, I would have been very surprised. And I would have been like, oh wait, Jalen Brunson's killing Donovan Mitchell in a playoff series again? Am I back in last season with Mavs versus Jazz? But yeah, we have all kinds of Locked On shows. You can go listen to Locked On Knicks, Locked On Cavs, Locked On Lakers, Locked On Grizzlies, Locked On Warriors, Locked On Kings for all this playoff stuff. All the Locked On shows will be going 5 days a week all throughout the season and throughout the postseason. Howard Beck, you can listen to him on all kinds of different shows. I think you're going on Locked On Knicks today, so you can go check out Locked On Knicks if you want to hear more about that. And guys, thanks so much for listening to us on Locked On NBA. Boom.